Alright, now that we have the sprint finished off, let's go ahead and do one more piece to this, just so we kind of have those small steps to make sure that we can get some of the basic movements completed with some limited knowledge of what's going on. We did a sprint, which tied in really close to the jog and run and walk styles, so there wasn't too much that we had to look at. Now, what if we decided that we want to add a whole new function? We're like, well, I like sprint, but I want to run even faster. If we wanted to run even faster, maybe we want to call it a boost. So let's say right below sprint, we'll just make a new function. We'll call this one function boost. And boost, let's go ahead and set it up the same way here. Boost, what it's going to do is simply, we'll say it boost, or let's see, moose player with extra speed. Alright. So our boost for our character, if we were to kind of keep it the same as what's currently right here, we could just add those similar words to it. Sometimes when I'm working on functions, when I start getting like really large, I'll sometimes just place the a working variable just right above it, so that I have those as reference. So for instance, we might go in here and say that our variable, just like we have the can sprint and can walk and run, we'll just say the variable is going to be called can boost, and this will be a boolean, and we'll make it equal to true. Alright, so let's go ahead and use that one to start with. So we'll start off with this by saying if can boost is true, and if it is true, then let's figure out what we want to do. If we were starting off with boost and we were like, well, what controls the player's speed? That's probably what we actually want to increase. Well, from the looks of these things right in here, the move speed is actually identified as part of something that makes the player move. At least it's checked against speed run and speed walk and speed sprint. So let's make a new variable, and we'll call this one speed boost. And our current settings, our current values to speed run, you can just look over in the inspector side over here. It looks like speed, walk, jog, and run is 2, 4, and 6. The sprint is actually up to 12. So let's actually increase this even more. We'll say it goes up to 20. So we'll do 20. Now the type for this is going to be a float value. All right. So we have it can boost, and it is the speed boost for the amount. So we're going to say if can boost. Now, how do we activate the boosting ability? What are we going to check for or check against? Let's see. What we could say is if the player is in a, let's say if he's in his run state. So let's open up our run function right here. What it's checking against is speed jog to speed sprint. So we could just go ahead and take this line right here and just copy it. So we're going to say that if can boost is true, if the move speed is greater than speed jog and it's less than speed sprint, that he's going to be in a run state, so we need to check for one extra thing. So the thing that's going to make this one different from what's above is that we're going to check for a button push. So we'll say input get button, and we'll just have it so that as long as you're pushing the button, it happens. Now remember, there could be a lot of extra options involved. Boost could actually be set to a timer, and you could do it where there's a 1 or 2 second boost, it stops, and then maybe you have a delay before you can actually boost again, or maybe it's based on a power-up, and when you get a power-up, then you get to boost for a few seconds. For us, we'll start off with a basic one here. We'll say if get button, and let's go ahead and just choose, actually, instead of get button, just so you can see a difference with this, we'll say input. We'll do just a direct one. We'll say get key. And the key that we're going to get, you could just choose any one, I believe. We'll go for an odd one here. We'll say G. Alright. So we're going to say that if the speed is within the run speed, and if the button G is pushed, the key G is pushed, then we want him to do something. Well, let's start off, and this is something that you can do. You can either send it straight to a message. Usually I like to send it to a print to start with, or a debug log, just so that it's kind of a separate from my current messaging system that gets printed to the console. The print, let's just say we're boosting. Alright. So, if we go back to here, now, what do you think is going to happen? Alright, think about it for a second. So, I'm going to go into my run stage, and then I'm pushing G on the keyboard, but what's not happening? Alright, now, why is the we're boosting not happening? Alright. So, think about it for a second. If you can figure it out, then go ahead and change it. If you can't figure it out, then just kind of focus on it here for a second, because this is one of those. It's a simple thing, but it can be something that might be frustrating down the road if you're not familiar with the code. This statement is true. This will actually read out as true, and this by itself should print. But if it's not printing, let me go ahead and turn this off just while I'm thinking about it. If it's not printing, then it's not being read, correct? So, if you go up to where all of our functions were being called, we don't actually have the boost function in here, remember? So, we'll put the boost function. We'll go ahead and fill this one out. Now, if we were to actually do it, it's going to check, and the one part of the check for the boost is that it's going to be checking for something called if it is grounded. So we can look into this one here in a second, but if the player is grounded, then all of these are possible, and the one that we just added was boost. So now, this time around, if we go back in here, and then we push play now, alright, so now when the player's running, if I decide to boost, I should get a print statement. Let's see, make sure I'm pushing G on the keyboard. Now we're boosting. Alright, so this lets us know that we're boosting, and this also lets us know that anything we put inside of the boost function, the call right here, should work for it. So let's go ahead and try this one. We'll say move speed. Since we know that move speed actually controls it, we'll say that move speed equals speed boost. So as long as this is being pushed, the G key, with the speed being in run, then boosting will take effect. So we'll save that. And boosting is 20. Alright, so we should see a noticeable difference with the player when he's running around now. You see how much faster the player runs? Like, all the way to speed 20. Now if I let go of the key, he just goes back to his normal state. And if I push the boost again, he boosts really fast. Alright. So, that's a very simple but effective way you can actually add boost to the character. We had direct access to the character's speed set on the move speed, which also means, for instance, I could say move speed equals a lot of different things right here. Since we're starting to kind of get the idea that this one call to move speed is controlling player speed, it's one of those things that, now that I'm starting to see it, I want to investigate a little bit more as to what's actually happening with move speed. If I was to start stepping through the code, find out where it's being called, how it's being used, this will help me understand a little bit better as to what it is that's controlling the character's move speed. Alright, so let's go ahead and comment what we currently have here. So on this one, we'll just say enables boosting for player. And we'll say it set boost speed to move speed. Alright, and the last thing we can do is make sure we can add that little messaging right there, so that if we want to have our debug log on, we'll just say player boosting. Okay, so we just added a new function to all of this code. It's one of those things that is a just kind of a side note, is that if you're able to add something like that, and you can add it pretty easy, all we had to do was add a function. All we had to do from there was simply included the function call inside of the update move direction, which is being called inside, just already set up, it's being called inside our update move direction. Now, does that mean that's the only way I can do it? No. I could actually go in here, and let's say, for instance, I comment this out. I could actually drop this in right here. If I say boost, we just drop it right inside our update, because we know our update's going to be looping through. If I had it inside of here, and I did the same thing, we move our player around, we push the G key, and then he winds up boosting. Alright, so be sure that, just remember, in terms of simplicity, this is definitely a very easy system to add new elements to add new functionality to it. Very simple. All we had to do was just add a function, and we could call it directly inside of update, or we could kind of stick to what the code is already being, how it's already being created, and just call it up right here. Alright, so now that we have the boost set into place, let's just spend just a couple of, maybe a minute or two here, and just look at the move speed. Since we were kind of looking at that, we kind of want to find out what exactly is happening on it, and let's take our two variables and drop those up in the top. Usually when I get done with a function, I'll just take the variables that are there, and we'll just move those up here. So we have two variables. Let's find out where they need to go. One of them is a true/false, so we'll place that one right below the can sprint. And then the speed, we have the speed boost. Let's find the sprint, and we'll drop it right below there. Alright. And we'll say this would be speed, or we'll just call this one boosting speed for player. And the true/false statement, we'll do set here. Alright. And this is enabled boost. Alright, so we drop those into place here. When we save it, we'll also get those options up over here. So on the can boost, we have it right here available now that we can actually check and uncheck. So if the player, say for instance the character that you're working on for one game can't boost, all you have to do is uncheck it. If he was to pick up a power-up maybe later on, you could actually check it and have it available. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump back there to the boost again. So remember, we used move speed. Well, if I go up, let's find move speed. And to find it, maybe you want to just push Control H. You want to place move speed inside your find option. And we could just kind of walk our way down. Now, first thing is we see something called hide inspector. If you have the @ sign and you have the hide inspector, what it does is basically it allows it to be a public variable, but not publicly available in the inspector. So if you're trying to keep things clean, you can just use this to hide it from there. At the same time, it also has ones called static. Now, if it's static, I don't believe it would actually show up anyways in here, but the static is allowed so that it creates a global variable. That way you can actually call this up inside of different scripts if you need it. The move speed, though, this is just a float. So all it is just simply a float value. Let's see where it's being added to the other elements here. So in the find next, first place that we find it, inside our update move direction, when you go down, you'll see move speed is equal to, and it has a math function for it, or math library, and it is the lerp, which means what? Well, if you hold mouse over here, you'll see that you need to have the two values. You've got an A and a B, and T is going to be time. So we have move speed to target speed times target direction magnitude times current speed, and then the current smooth. Well, there's a lot of variables right here being added together to get the end of the lerp. But the one that we're looking at, the one we're trying to see, is the move speed. Okay, so the move speed, in terms of trying to make sure it's smooth between the lerp, we want to make sure that the initial value, the starting value, is the player's current speed, which is basically move speed. Now, the speed he's traveling to get to is the target speed with the target direction times the current speed. Okay, now we'll look at this when we get to these variables, but just if you're trying to think of just a basic idea, I'm looking at this going, well, I think I know what's going on, but I'm not totally sure. And that's fine. When we get to looking at target speed, when we get to looking at target direction, current speed, it'll start to make sense to us. That last part, current smooth, just based on this, I'm going to assume that this is somehow gathering up the time. And if I look right above it, one line above here, I'm going to notice that current smooth is actually speed smoothing times the delta time. Okay, and if I look one line below, I see that target speed, being right here, is also getting another way of, is actually using the math library to get another option through here. So we have a couple of things going on, and we'll get to these in a little bit, but the main thing is just to go, okay, here's my move speed. It's doing some kind of calculation, and it's making the player move fast and go forward and do those things. Alright, so let's double check, see if it's being used elsewhere. And inside of your update function, you go down to a word called movement now, and the movement is actually getting something called move direction and move speed. And if we go down a few more, we see that move speed is also being checked against some variables, some numbers. Alright, and then after that point, through all the functions in here, it's being checked against a number for the movement. Alright. So hopefully when you look at things like this, and again, we're not going over these right now, because this isn't like when it comes to what's actually happening here. We're just trying to figure out a basic idea. What is move speed? And from the sounds of it, it moves the player forward based on some things inside of here. Alright. So now that we know that we can control move speed, and when we put in a number, it actually gives us what we think is going to happen. It's going to give us a new speed for the player movement. That allows us to have that boosting, which finishes up the boosting and also finishes up a little bit more looking into the update move direction and update function. Alright.